going to look very briefly in this video at some key definitions to do with solubility, and to illustrate it I've got two substances. I've got some flour and I've got some sugar. I'm going to put both of them into water and we'll see what happens. You may already have an idea what we're going to see. If I start with the flour, I'll give that a good stir. Got some lumps on the surface, but we'll leave the rest of that and see what happens if it settles for a moment. I'm going to put just a spoonful of sugar in that one there. Again, give it a good mix before we allow it to settle. If we look at the flour one, it's quite gross because a few of the bits of it have clumped together on the surface, but the rest of it has made it go cloudy. That means the flour particles are kind of floating in the liquid, they're suspended in the liquid. They haven't dissolved though, because if they had, we'd be able to see through it. So cloudy tells us that it's not dissolved. If a substance doesn't dissolve, then that substance is insoluble. So while those particles of flour are quite fine, they have not broken down into the smallest possible particles and bonded with the water, so they've not dissolved. If we look at the sugar, if I just take the spoon out, we can see there's a little bit the sugar's just sunk to the bottom, hasn't dissolved, but very clearly the rest of it has dissolved. And we can tell that because we can still see through to the word sugar. So most of that sugar has dissolved into the water because it's made a clear solution. So I'll put here, clear tells us that it has dissolved. Therefore, we call the sugar soluble. It means that it does dissolve. And what happens when it dissolves is those sugar particles will break down into smallest molecules, and those molecules of sugar will interact with the water, they'll form bonds with the water, and we've got our clear solution. Some other important terms with the sugar: because it dissolved, we call the sugar the solute, and solute means a soluble solid. Lots of words that begin with S. We call the water, the liquid, a solvent. So a solvent is any liquid that a solute dissolves into. It can be other liquids, but water is a very common example. And they formed, when we mix them together, a solution. And a solution is the mixture of the solute plus the solvent. In the case of the flour was not a solute and the water was not a solvent for that flour because the flour didn't dissolve. So we just call the flour an insoluble solid. And those are your key definitions to do with solubility.